Tim Bratz!
Bright lights too. Cool. So, dude, Pat's such a rock star. I've known Pat for several years, and when I first started coaching apartment complex and stuff like that, and by the way, I have nothing to sell you guys. Carlos called me up. He's like, hey man, I really want people to start thinking bigger and taking their mindset to another level. Will you come in, talk a little bit about commercial real estate and how you grew from residential into commercial? I have nothing to sell. Everything that I'm going to give you today is going to be pure content. Get your phones out, get your notebooks out. I'm going to go fast. But I've known Pat for many, many years. Dude's an absolute all-star and is just always bringing so much energy and always so positive all the time. So if you guys aren't connected with him, make sure you're following him on social. And can't say enough good things about Carlos too and his whole team. These guys are, they actually give a shit, right? A lot of people just want to promote or sell or make a ton of money, and he does that by giving and providing so much value that it comes full circle. So appreciate them having me here and pumped to hang out with you guys. So today I'm going to talk about how to scale and create legacy wealth with commercial real estate. So here's my quick agenda. I'm going to give you a quick background on myself, talk a little bit about the benefits of commercial real estate, and I think it's going to be really important for you to figure out how to find, fund, and structure commercial real estate deals. How many of you guys are real estate investors in the residential space, by a show of hands? Okay, good chunk. Anybody investing in commercial real estate already? Good. And how many of you are business owners, just not in real estate, but maybe looking to preserve wealth by investing in real estate? Okay, good chunk. All right, so it's about a third of or 40-20-40, I'd say. So I'm going to talk about all those things. What I want to do is demystify commercial real estate. I think a lot of people don't get into it because it gets a little bit complex and they use these goofy words. The reality is it's very similar to residential, and all it is bigger numbers, more zeros, and a little bit different verbiage. So I'm going to go through some case studies on how I've creatively structured and creatively financed and funded those deals. I'm going to go over a simple cash flow formula, right? How you underwrite apartment buildings and commercial and rental property cash flow deals is very different today than it was a few years ago, with rising interest rates and insurance costs going haywire and cost of capital being all over the place. All those things are adversely affecting real estate in certain capacities, but they're different levers that you can pull, and we're going to talk about how to pull those in order to make sure a deal works or make sure it doesn't work and you can walk away and sort faster. And then how to stay connected. So, quick on myself. I'm 38 years old today. Bought my first property on a credit card when I was 23 years old. I don't come from money. My dad was a cop. My mom was a teacher. I'm a blue-collar kid from Cleveland, Ohio. All right. So I was able to work my way up. I was going through the market when everything was going bananas last time around, 03 to 07. I was going through college, and everybody's like, if you want to make money and build wealth, get involved in real estate. So got involved in real estate, showed up at the party in 2007, 2008. The whole market collapses, and everybody's running out the back door saying run from real estate. So it was kind of a unique position because opposite of today, there was like deals everywhere but money nowhere. And so it was a little bit different, and I had to creatively finance, creatively structure a lot of the deals that I took down early on, which allowed me to then have those tools in the tool belt and be able to reposition those and reuse those and bring them back out over the course of the past few years as interest rates have gotten a little wonky. I started out, like I said, in wholesaling. I had a turnkey business. I've done retail flips. We were flipping 80 to 100 houses a year for a few years, and I bought my first apartment building in 2012. Actually this week, 11 years ago, in Cleveland, Ohio, an 8-unit building, and I saw the efficiency that it provided. So scaled more into multifamily. I've done retail, I've done office, I've done self-storage, development projects, ground up, private lending, all those things. My focus today is on apartments and really triple net lease. My portfolio is 80% apartments, 20% a handful of other things. I got about a little over 3,500 doors. I've acquired over 6,000 units in my lifetime, and I've sold off about 25. Thank you. Sold off about 2,500. Write this down. It's cooler to say you own 6,000 doors than to actually own 6,000 doors. all right? There's a lot of shit that comes with, there's a lot of growth and a lot of things that you need to make sure the foundation is set before you get there. And for a couple of years there, I didn't. And so I've learned a lot of lessons on that stuff. If we're not connected on Instagram and Facebook, just connect with me. A lot of the stuff I'm going to zoom through today, I talk about it nonstop on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok, and our YouTube channel. So that's my only pitch, all right? So mindset to just changing your mindset to thinking bigger. The size of your success is directly related to what? No, not your IQ, not your level of education. I know people nowhere near as smart as you and me that have massive portfolios and 9-figure net worths. So if it's not that, could it be socioeconomic status? There's people who've come from far less than you and me that have gone straight to the top. Access to resources. Nope. If you're resourceful enough, you can find resources. Who you know, that's not a part of it. Age, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, absolutely not. Probably the least of which that influences your size of your success. You know what influences your size of success more than anything else? The size of your success is directly correlated to the size of your, I've had people yell out wiener when I say this before, and I was like, are you kidding me? It's not your wiener, it is your thinking. The size of your thinking. Thinking bigger makes the difference. Quick story. I was on a yacht a few years ago. You guys know Mark Evans by any chance? He's a good buddy of mine, and Austin Rutherford and a couple other guys were on a yacht. We rented a yacht that was 120 feet for a week, and we cruised around the Virgin Islands down in the Caribbean. And as we're on this yacht, we would get on, it was a 120-foot yacht, it was probably $6, $7, $8 million yacht, and we couldn't even, dock at these different ports that we would go to. And so instead of docking, we'd have to get on the tender and go into town and go into the bars and the restaurants and the cafes and all that stuff. And people would be like, oh my gosh, you on that yacht? And it's the first time I've been on a boat that big. So I'm like, yeah, we're on that yacht. We rented it for the week and blah, blah, blah. And we're business owners and all this stuff. And I felt like the king of the Virgin Islands for that week, And the last day, we're on the yacht. We're cruising back into St. Thomas, into the big port there. And as we're there, we look up to the side of us, and there's a $320 million yacht. It was 4 times the size of ours. We did some research on it. It costs $100,000 a day to operate it, between taxes, insurance, dockage, all those kinds of things. And the gas tank, how much do you think the gas tank was to fill that yacht up? $1 million gas tank. And so all of a sudden, I go from thinking I'm king of the Caribbean to king dingling, because somebody's obviously doing bigger and better things than me. The only difference, though, was that he was thinking at a higher level than what we were thinking at that time, right? That's the only difference, and had done it for a longer amount of time. Kids, I got an 8-year-old, I have a 6-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old. And when you ask a kid to dream about, what kind of car do you want when you grow up? Oh, shit, my kid doesn't say shit. Well, actually, he does say shit sometimes, but they'll say, hey, I want a Batmobile, and I want extra jets on the back and rockets to go into outer space and go to the bottom of the ocean and do all these crazy things. And then all of a sudden, life smacks us around a little bit, right? And you talk to somebody today who's in the real world, and they go from those dreams to all of a sudden it's what? It's something reliable, right? Some good on gas, fuel efficient, gets me A to B. We stop dreaming. And most people reduce their dreams to fit their mindset. I'm asking you guys, and Carlos asked me to help you guys, increase your mindset to then match your dreams. Does that sound good? All right, let's talk a little bit about how I've done that with commercial real estate. I want to demystify commercial real estate for you and take it and put it in the simplest terms possible. When you look at a single family property, it is valued like a business is valued. So it's based on the net operating income. How much money do you keep at the end of the day after all the income comes in and after all the expenses are paid? What does that net operating income look like? And then there's a multiple of that net operating income. That multiple in real estate, especially commercial real estate, is called a cap rate. All it is the multiple. Commercial real estate is that exact same thing. The only difference is there's more line items, right? There's more sources of income. You might have laundry income and parking income and storage income and application fees and pet fees. So there's, and obviously more units, so there's more income. And there's more expenses, right? Maybe you have some additional salaries, maintenance, utilities, amenities that you gotta maintain. But because there's more income and there's more expenses, you still have a net operating income at the end of the day, and the multiple of that gives you the value of that property. The only difference is, you're talking about more zeros. When I bought that first 8-unit building 11 years ago this week, the scalability popped up in my head. I realized I didn't have to go and negotiate with 8 sellers, I talked to 1. I didn't have to look at 8 foundations and 8 roofs, I looked at 1. I met the contractor at 1 location instead of 8 locations. Does that make sense? I collected rent from 1 location. And because of that, because of the scale that's associated with commercial real estate and getting into larger deals, the expenses can be compressed a little bit versus what they could be in residential. Another reason I got into commercial and have loved it is because bigger deals equals more equity. When I was wholesaling, and I'm like, listen, I think wholesaling's amazing, and I think it's a great stepping stone to then find deals so that way you can source deals on the multifamily side and then build some long-term wealth. I think everybody should have some sort of active business with long-term, like, residual assets, right? I think everybody needs to have both of those things. And so, when I got into bigger deals, there was more equity. And when I was carving up, $20,000 wholesale fee and trying to attract A players onto my team, $20,000 carved up 4 ways wasn't that exciting. But when I buy a $7 million property that then we could renovate and fix up and then make it worth $10 million, carving up $3 million of equity was a little bit more exciting, yes or no? Right? So I like the idea of, instead of owning 100% of a grape, owning a quarter of a watermelon. You understand what that means? There's a lot more juice in the squeeze of a quarter of a watermelon than there is in 100% of a grape. And you can attract A players. Multifamily and commercial is more of a team sport versus a solo sport. And you can attract A players so that way you can focus on the stuff that you like to do and staff out or partner up with the things that maybe you're not good at or you don't like to do. Tax advantages, if we have time, I'll dive into some of the tax advantages towards the end. I'm going to raise $6 million before the end of the year, just based solely on depreciation plays for my investors. And if I don't get time, make sure that we're connected on social media, and you'll see me talking about that, and you'll see how I structure it, so that way you can utilize it as a tool when you're raising capital too. And then building legacy wealth, right? Like that's what we're here for. How many people got involved in real estate because they want passive income, residual income, and legacy wealth? And then how many people got stuck in the transactional trap of trading their time for money and doing a deal, having to do another deal in order to make more money again? So the beauty of buying and holding real estate, especially commercial, is that you buy it, and over time, the rents bump. There's a natural forced savings of writing checks every single month, and you're paying down principal on the loan amount, and then all of a sudden, you pick your head up 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and your net worth has multiplied, right? Let me give you an example. This isn't me bragging. I'm just giving you the quantitative analysis of what this looks like. I own $350 million of property today, okay? I own about 40% total of that, me personally. Let's say I'm fully leveraged, which I'm not, but let's say I am. And let's say that I haven't paid down any principal, and it's $350 and I owe $350 on it. Over the next 20 to 30 years, as I pay off all those loans, how much is my debt going to be on those properties? It's all paid off, right? So it's zero. What would you say happens to property values over the course of 20 to 30 years? It increases by what? I'd say double in 30 years. I think that's pretty conservative. So in 30 years from now, if I never do another deal, my portfolio doubles in value, and we pay it off free and clear. $700 million times I own 40% of that. If I never do anything else again, my net worth is $280 million down the road. That's how you build legacy wealth. You don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate, let it cash flow, and just wait. You just hold it as long as you can. You pick your head up, and you're like, holy shit, how are you worth that much money? That's what happens here. Okay. At the end of the day, residential versus commercial is just bigger money in the commercial side of things. And so you're thinking bigger, and if you play with dollars, guess what you earn? Dollars. If you play in the thousands, you earn thousands. But if you play with millions, you can earn millions. So here's where I search for properties, and I'm not going to dive into each one of these, but guess what? It's the same places where you guys are finding residential deals. Driving for dollars, dialing for dollars, emailing your database. Google reviews, look for crappy ratings on apartment buildings. Chances are they're not taking care of it. Tenants are pissed off, they're not paying rent. You can dive in there and say, hey, are you interested in selling? Sounds like your property's a little bit distressed. Online, if you guys aren't on Zillow or LoopNet, MLS, guess what? People are like, oh, you know, I want to find off-market deals. Who's more motivated than a seller who reaches out to somebody to then say, I want to sell my property, will you market my property for me? And then it sits on the market for 30, 60, like that is a motivated seller. Everybody's trying to find off-market. I find phenomenal deals on the MLS all the time. The difference between me and other people is that I swing the bat at every single deal. I don't, the numbers don't work. No, I'll go in and say, hey, you're asking $5 million, I'd have to be at closer to 3. Is it worth continuing the conversation? At least I'm swinging the bat. Most of the time, I can kick rocks, right? And they tell me to take a hike. But occasionally, great deals will pop up. Here's another set of things. I get a ton of deals from social media. Talking about what I do on social media. How many of you guys are on social media and you use it as a tool to create content, not just consume content? You got to use it as a tool. It is like the 8th wonder of the world if used as a marketing tool. But if you don't use it as a marketing tool, then it's an absolute time waste. You got to be very intentional about your social media. So I'm on social media groups, I'm engaging, I'm answering questions, I'm trying to interact with people as often as I can, and then when I ask for a deal on social media, I have people who say, boom, what about this one, what about this one, what about this one? And yeah, I have to sort through a lot of them, and we make a lot of offers, and we get a handful that end up actually closing. It's a numbers game. All this is a math equation. Business is a math equation. Write that down. It's not emotional. Business is a math equation. If you can add, subtract, divide, and multiply, you can do business. All right, so a couple case studies. I'm going to do it on time. Oh, I'm good. This is a 48-unit apartment building I bought in Sheffield Lake, Ohio. It was a value-add deal. I bought this in 2018, and we stabilized it over 24 months. So I bought, and listen, 2018 is 5 years ago, right? Like almost 6 years ago now. So some of the numbers are going to be a little bit different, but this was a play that worked out well. I essentially did the BRRRR strategy. You guys know what BRRRR is? Buy, renovate, rent, refinance. You could do that, not with single family, but you can also do that with commercial real estate, and that's what I did with this property. So I bought it, and BRRRR method is not a good method today with interest rates where they are. But back then, when interest rates go back down, the BRRRR method's phenomenal because properties were appraising for more than what you could even sell it for. The loan amounts were essentially what you would sell it for, and you'd net the same amount of money. So when we bought this, we were all into it for about $2 million. I got a local bank to give me $1.6 million, and I had a private investor bring $450,000. The difference between residential and commercial in the finance world is that the banks assume that you're going to raise private money. You don't need money in your own bank account. You don't need to season that money in your own bank account. They expect it to come from limited partners and investors. I built my portfolio to over $250 million before I ever put it. Well, I put $125,000 in total. That's how much I put personally in the first $250 million of property because I raised it all from private money. And I was able to provide enough value for those investors where they wanted to invest, and it created a piece of equity for me that then I was able to build my net worth substantially. So that 450 can come from one person at 450, or it could come from 9 people at $50,000, or it could come from 450 people at $1,000. I wouldn't suggest that, but it's possible. So what we did is over 2 years, we stabilized it, meaning we renovated it, we put good tenants in, we put better management in. And then we refinanced it with agency debt. That's like Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. And our loan, we were able to push the value to $3.2 million, and they gave us a loan of $2.4 million about. At 3.69% interest rate, and we paid back the bank and limited partners with that money, and then the general partners, who's me and one other guy, split up 80% of the equity in the deal and the refi proceeds, all that stuff, right? The equity is worth X number of dollars, cash flow, gave ourselves a raise of $93,000 a year from one apartment building, plus how much it increased our equity and our value, right? Tim, those deals aren't found today. I just sold that deal last year. As interest rates were going bananas, I have fixed rate debt on this. It's Majority of the loans in commercial real estate are assumable loans, meaning all you have to do is step in and you can assume, you can take over legally that person's loan. Even with interest rates rising, only 10% of commercial loans are affected by the interest rates, because majority of people refinanced when rates were low, and you can step in and just take over their mortgage. You can take over their payments. And that's a way that you can step in and say, you don't have to underwrite a deal and say, I need 8% financing, this needs to make sense at 8%. It doesn't necessarily need to. You can take over their debt at 3.6% and still get into a property at great terms. So that's what a traditional deal has looked like for me in the past. Over the past couple years, I've been doing a lot of creative financing deals. So this is my mountain house in western North Carolina. It's 12,000 square feet, 8 beds, 9 baths. I was there yesterday, actually. And I was looking for like, I just want something simple. I want something up in the mountains, something quiet, right? And then that thinking mindset came in, right? Think bigger, think bigger. And this popped up on Zillow. And I bought this 2.5 years ago in the heat of the market and got seller financing on this thing. So I structured it we took it from a single family, turned it into a short-term rental. Okay, so that way I can take a liability, a second home of mine, and turn it into an asset. Does that make sense? A lot of people just pay for their liabilities out of their own pocket. I look at every liability in my life and try to figure out how do I turn it into an asset that actually makes me money. And so that way I can have a lifestyle that other people only dream of because I financially structured this thing. So not only did I get seller financing on it, I was all in for like 3.2 million, let's call it. But I syndicated it, meaning I raised private money the same way that I syndicate my apartment complexes. So I got seller financing at 4% on a 30-year amortization. It balloons out in 10 years. And then I raised private money for my investors. Now, private money is one of those levers where you're looking at your cost of capital and it can be pretty expensive. So what I did, instead of paying my investors 10%, I went to them and I gave them 4% on their money and a free week at the property. Now, this rents for around $2,500 a night. Right? So they get an off-season week, let's just call it $2,000 a night. They get an off-season week, which is about $14,000 of value, where they can go there, they can host their own mastermind or corporate event, they bring their team out there, bring their in-laws out there, hang out with the family, do whatever they want, and they get $14,000 of value from staying at the property, and they get make 4%, so if they invest $100,000, they got $4,000 a year. So on a total investment of $100,000, they're gaining $18,000 per year of value. You guys following me on this? Not only that, but this thing's today worth $6 million. You couldn't build it for less than, that's $500 a foot on the side of a mountain. The infrastructure alone would cost $1 million just to get stuff up there. So they're stepping, and I got a little piece of equity in the deal too. So they stepped into equity that's worth 50, 60 grand on top of getting that much value. So you understand how I'm playing with the levers. I'm looking at cost of capital and how interest rates are going up and how much revenue I can make from a property versus what my expenses and my debt service is going to be. And I pull levers different ways and I get creative on how I structure these things. You guys following me on that? Does that make sense? You can do this with any kind of house that you want. You can short-term rental it. It pays for all the debt service, pays for all the operating expenses. I get free use of it up to 3 months a year. I use it like 4 weekends a year. I wish I was up there more. This is my first, let me see it. Yeah, we'll do this one. This is my first rental property I ever bought. So I bought this in 2009, I think. North Charleston, South Carolina. It was 2 single-family houses on 1 single parcel. They were both rented for $550 a month. The all-in price was 50 grand. I got the seller to carry back financing in a second lien position because I went and raised private money for the down payment and for some operating capital, and I got the seller to stay in a position behind them. So again, no bank financing, raised private money of 25 grand, got the seller to carry back $32,000, but Tim, that adds up to $57,000. I walked away from closing with a check of $6,600. I essentially took a 1% acquisition fee, 10% acquisition fee, and put it in my pocket. You can do that if you're buying your own property and scaling and you're buying things with equity in it. Positively cash flowed, and I ended up selling it on an installment contract 20 months later or 75 grand, right? So I'm trying to stimulate some ideas and thoughts in your brain on how you can creatively structure not just single family deals, but also multifamily deals. One more that I have is, this is old Masonic temple in Cleveland, Ohio that I'm a minority investor in, and the majority partner wants to sell it. So we're working on cutting a deal where I'm going to assume the existing financing of $2 million, and then I'm going to bring $2 million more of private money, and then the seller, he is going to carry back $1.25 million at 2% interest rate. In order to make the deal work and get him his price, I was able to structure it under those kinds of terms, right? It cash flows from day one. We're going to add some additional tenants and add some additional income, and it's going to really jump from there. So you guys just see, I'm giving you a couple different examples how you can get seller financing on the primary loan, seller financing on the secondary loan, seller to be your equity investor, or traditional types of financing. This is the key here. This simple formula. You take your net operating income, all your income minus all your expenses equals your net operating income. And then you multiply out whatever those different variables are on the debt service, and you make sure that the net operating income is more than your cost of capital. So one more case study. So this is a Savannah, Georgia townhome development that I bought about 24 months ago. And one thing to note, this says stabilized NOI. Stabilized means what? Like after repair value. Okay, so I didn't buy it like this, but when you take a look at a house to flip, do you care about what it is today or what it can be worth when you sell it? What it can be worth when you sell it, right? So similarly, I'm looking at what it is today when I buy an apartment building, just from like a, am I losing money every month? Do I need to just create like an interest reserve to make sure that I can cover my payments every month or not? So I look at it minimally, but I really care about what it can be worth. And there's a lot of ways to increase the value of a commercial piece of property outside of just raising rents, right? You can on that first slide that I put up there, but you can add laundry income. You could add market, like if it's on a main road, you can take a billboard on the side of it. There's people that put cell phone towers on top of their buildings in New York City. Parking income, maybe there's an unused basement that you can then create storage lockers in and rent those out. Pet fees is a big one. We've taken old, tennis courts, and instead of ripping them down and costing $10,000 in order to throw it all away, we just throw some turf in there, put some doggy bags up, and then we make it a pet run. And now we attract pet owners who pay an extra deposit or pet fee of $100 per pet and an extra $25 per month. So I'm looking for amenities that generate income. You know what I don't like? Pools, right? I can cover it up, put in something else, right? Those are things that take money out of your pocket. How do you increase income? How do you reduce expenses? So on this one, we were able to stabilize, increase the rents, add some amenities, and I've taken a simple profit and loss statement. If you guys have seen a profit and loss statement from an apartment building, there's a lot more line items than this, but they all fall into these categories. It's this simple. And the net operating income on this is $932,000 today. This is my blended cost of capital, and here's how you calculate it. I bought it for $10 million. I assumed their bank loans of $5.6 million at 3% interest rate. I then got seller financing in order to get up to an 80% loan to value. I then got seller financing at 4% on $2.4 million. And look at 5.6 at 3% cost me $168,000. 2.4 million at 4% cost me $96,000. And then I raised investor money, $2 million, and I paid my investors 10% return. That cost me $200,000 a year. So my blended cost of capital, you guys see how I calculated that, right? My blended cost of capital is $464,000. This is what matters when you're underwriting deals today. Well, where's the value going to be? Well, listen, if you have long-term debt in place, fixed rate debt in place, then it doesn't matter where values go. Like the value can go to zero on paper. If this building's worth zero on paper, but I have positive cash flow of $450,000 a year, regardless of what the market says, I'm putting $40,000 a month in my pocket. Do you give a shit what the value is on paper? No. Does it cash flow positive? That's the key here. I I was with my acquisition guy up at the Mountain House yesterday, and I asked him to put a calculator together. And so we put a calculator that simplifies this. And so essentially all you do is you plug in the income, the expenses, taxes, insurance, all that stuff. And then you can plug in however many variables you have. So bank loan, financing, seller financing, equity investors. And you can plug in the amount, you can plug in the interest rate, and it calculates, does it cash flow positive or not? So if you go there, it's free. You can download it if you want it. You don't have to download it if you don't want it, but it's at that QR code. And my social media stuff is there too, so that way you can, we can stay connected on social media as well. And in closing, I zoomed through it. I know I fire hose you guys with a bunch of shit and a bunch of numbers. Your head's probably spinning. But I wanted to get through it, right? I'm sure they're going to share the recordings and all that stuff. And what's more important is that we're connected and it stimulates some ideas so that way you can dive deeper. If anybody has questions, shoot me a message on Instagram, on Facebook. I answer all my own messages. So if I can be a resource for you, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. But in closing, do you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more understanding of commercial real estate? A little, like there's a level of comfort now, a level of confidence, where now you can at least start asking for deals. Send out an email, send out a post, right? Like call a couple sellers, say, hey, will you send me over the financials on this? And then you can look at the financials, and you can take a look at what the debt would cost, or if there's assumable financing, or if there's any seller financing, and start having some of those conversations with them. So that way, you can start underwriting these deals. And just going, it's like going to the gym, right? You start lifting weights, and you get a little stronger every single deal that you underwrite. A little stronger every single offer that you make. That fear is very paralyzing sometimes, which I think is why a lot of people don't get into commercial real estate. And what's funny is, you realize fear and faith are the exact same thing? They're both believing in something that has not yet come to pass. They're both believing in something that has never happened. They're both a story in our head. Fear and faith. The only difference is one's positive and one's negative. But if it's a story in our own head, the beauty of that is it's our own story. And we get to select, we get to choose if we want to be positive or negative. Does that make sense? Hey, this is not, it might be a lot, it might be complex, but it's not hard. You know what's hard? Hard is going to work for somebody else for 40 years in order to retire on less money than you couldn't already live off of for the first 40. That's fucking hard. But putting your head down for 5 to 10 years and collecting some real estate, some rental real estate, and then sitting on it for the next 30 years, that's not hard, right? It's a lot harder to be ordinary than it is to be extraordinary. Write that down. Appreciate you guys having me. Love you guys. Thank you for being here.
Tim Bratz, everybody!